if there's one thing that across the board, my constituents of Adams, Cumberland County do not want to see a tax increase on their income.
And to be honest with you, Representative, I don't know that you find many Democrats that want to do that either.
That's fair. By the way, did you know the governor wants to spend $48 billion? Welcome back to By the Way, Did You Know? And this week is a big week in Harrisburg because it kicks off the budget season with the governor's budget proposal, because that's what this is. He gave his speech on Tuesday of the budget week, which we kind of kicks off the season. And really, this is the starting point. This is Governor Shapiro's ability to say all of the wonderful things he wants to do for Pennsylvania. And the real work begins now. This is a proposal. It's a starting point. But as lawmakers, and especially myself serving on the appropriations team, we now use this as the benchmark to start picking apart the governor's proposal, what his spending plan is over the next couple of weeks with budget hearings. So, because I think this is really important, this is one of the most important things we do as state legislators, is passing a budget every year. I thought it'd be good to have somebody from the appropriations team, one of our staff members who is well versed in this and a good friend of mine. And Charlie O'Neill is here from the House Republican appropriations team. And Charlie, thanks for being here. And what do you think? Yesterday was the budget. We were all in the rotunda yesterday for the grand spectacle that was Josh Shapiro's speech. What's your biggest takeaway from yesterday?
My biggest takeaway from yesterday by far was I'm glad that I am not you and I did not have to sit in the rotunda on one of those uncomfortable chairs for 2 hours to listen to what was a completely overdone speech. But
yeah, it was over an hour and a half speech. I was smart. I sat in the back because everyone was kind of trying to be on the sides. There was a lot of seats in the back that weren't filled, so that's where I sat, spread out, and got to see it, in the most comfortable position I could be in.
Well, that's good. And a lot of talking and a lot of spending. So overall, this proposal is going to spend $48.34 billion if it were adopted wholesale. So that is an increase of 8.4% over state spending from last year, $3.7 billion. One of the heftier increases we've ever seen in state budget history in terms of the percentage growth, but certainly $48 billion is the most we've ever spent in general fund dollars in the history of the Commonwealth. So it's a huge increase, very pie in the sky. It's really almost as if the governor went through the catalog of progressive ideas and started circling as much things as he could and then put them in a list like a kid does to Santa Claus, and that's really ultimately what we ended up with yesterday. And I think you saw that in the responses from both House Republicans and Senate Democrats, that this proposal spends way too much. We're starting at way too high of a number. So we're going to spend the next couple of weeks, as you mentioned, you're going to be an integral part of asking these agency heads all about the spending that is within their agencies. Because the one thing this budget does is spreads out a lot of spending.
Yeah, and it's across the board. I mean, the governor took an hour and a half yesterday to talk about, basically, as you said, how we're going to spend money in every area of every part of the Commonwealth. I've been telling people we're going to promise everything to everybody. And look, we care about things that he talked about yesterday. We've shown that over the last couple of years in budgets that were passed, even when we had the majority. But when you keep growing government as fast as we're growing it, and the spending number, I mean, we're talking an 8% increase, over 8% increase over last year. It is just not sustainable. And, the governor was pretty critical yesterday of us as House Republicans of fighting to put money in the rainy day fund, to put money aside, and kind of like joked and was, critical of balancing a budget. And that methodology is just not healthy to the future of Pennsylvania's economics.
No, it's important to note that even the governor's own proposal assumes that he is spending more than revenues that are coming in. The revenues that come in, obviously, i.e. taxes. So he is assuming that the taxes that we're going to collect next year cannot cover his spending plan. What he's doing is he's taking money from our surplus. Our surplus is full of one-time funds, mostly left over from those COVID dollars. Obviously, during COVID, the federal government passed several large spending bills, which ushered money to the state. Because of House Republicans like yourself, you said, wait a minute. Just because the federal government is giving us this huge amount of money doesn't mean we have to spend it all in one shot. Let's spend what we have to spend. Let's save what we can save. And that's exactly what you did.
Yeah, and the governor's saying, I mean, he in his speech, he said we have $11 billion, $11 billion in surplus. What does that mean? I mean, because people hear that like, wow, that's a lot of money that the governor's just holding on to. But what is that money?
Yeah, at the end of this fiscal year, if the governor's plan was adopted, and as a big caveat, if, he's going to take our surplus and go from $7 billion to $3.4 billion. He's conflating two things here. He's taking the surplus dollars and he's combining them with the rainy day fund.
So let's stop right there. When we say surplus money, what is that? Explain that.
So surplus is all of us have a checking account, right? And what we strive to do is have a little bit of a cushion in that checking account so that every month, we're not draining that account to zero. That's your surplus. That's money that's left over. It helps with your cash flow. We all have that month where, something came up, we had a car repair. Right.
Yeah.
Anything,
yeah.
right? You need a little bit of that surplus just to give a little bit of padding so that you don't have to worry about dipping into your savings account. And the state has a savings account, believe it or not, that's called the rainy day fund. So when he's talking about spending this surplus money, it's just not as simple as, oh, there's a surplus and, we should just spend it all. That isn't good financial practice for you at home, for your families. It's not good financial practice if you have a business, and it shouldn't be accepted at the state level either.
Yeah, and the governor even was, touting yesterday that our credit ratings are better. There's a reason for that.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah,
Yes.
you don't go apply for a mortgage and have nothing in the bank. You're gonna have a hard time. A lot of debt. It's really you're set up for not success if you have a ton of debt and you have no savings. I'm sure loans aren't going to come very easy to you. So
and in fact, all three credit rating agencies said the reason that we have the outlook we do is because we have a surplus. But if the Commonwealth plans on spending more money, and two of the services actually cited the court case with the basic education funding formula. If we raise spending without finding recurring revenues, they will come back and downgrade us. That is exactly what this budget does. It increases recurring spending without finding revenue to match it.
yeah, and this is classic Josh Shapiro of living in the now, here and now, and worrying about elevating his profile and talking about all the great things that he's going to promise. He doesn't care about the future down the road. I mean, in less than 5 years, we'll have zero surplus, zero rainy day, and really nothing left to tax because he's proposing new taxes in this budget too.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of folks have talked about, you look around Pennsylvania, there's legalized marijuana. Why don't we legalize marijuana? And some of the advocates even said it's going to fix our financial state that we're in. It's going to bring us revenue. Best case scenario, this is bringing in about $300 million a year, legalized marijuana.
Yeah.
On top of dealing with all the federal issues and problems that we're going to have to work through, on top of the fact that we already have medical marijuana available in the state. So there's a lot that needs to get worked out with that, but it is not a panacea. It's not going to come in and it's not going to all of a sudden bring us enough revenue where we're able to afford what is in this budget of $2.4 billion on new or expanded spending on government programs. It's not going to cover it.
Yeah, and the Independent Fiscal Office every year presents to, they used to present to the whole General Assembly or to the whole appropriations team. Now, House Democrats, I don't think, want to hear from the IFO. But in any event, over the last couple of years, they have been tracking this legalization and tax revenue from different states, and to your point, it's not the cash cow that everybody's been saying. I mean, again, this is The IFO, the Independent Fiscal Office, nonpartisan agency that kind of looks at things, okay, well, this is the plus and minus of certain proposals. And they've basically said, looking at what other states have done, even places like Colorado that have had it forever, this has not been the cash cow that everyone thinks it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And the other thing that's in here as well is the taxing of skill games, which you see in a lot of bars and restaurants. That also is not going to bring in enough money to put us on a stable financial foot moving forward. He is spending way more than we are bringing in, with no plan on how to close that. The one way that you can close that gap is by raising the income tax. And that is ultimately where we're going to be at in 4 to 5 years. We're going to have to either raise taxes, raise the income tax, or we're going to have to dramatically cut spending.
And look, Charlie, I know, like, if there's one thing that my constituents do not want me to go back and try to sell them, and that's a tax increase.
Sure.
I mean, it's just not, it's a non-starter. I mean, if there's one thing that across the board, you know, my constituents of Adams and Cumberland County do not want to see a tax increase on their income.
And to be honest with you, Representative, I don't know that you find many Democrats that want to do that either.
That's fair.
You know, how many people really want to pay more in their income tax? How many people really want to do expanded sales tax, or, you know, pay taxes on things that we don't pay tax now, like clothes and food? I don't think a lot of people want to do that. I think a lot of people feel that they're taxed enough and that government needs to live within its means. And this budget is doing the exact opposite.
Budgeting's tough. Look, you got to prioritize things. You got to spread the money around and make sure that we're funding the things that we need to fund in Pennsylvania, like roads and bridges and education and you know, economic development, those types of things that are going to push Pennsylvania forward. But that means you got to spread it around. You can't just promise everybody everything. And I think this proposal that the governor's put out does just that. It promises everything to everybody, and while also hitting some political talking points along the way. I mean, look, this is the governor's ability to push an agenda as well, which he certainly did yesterday. And it's up to us as House Republicans to fight back and speak for, you know, the folks that we represent and the financial success of Pennsylvania. And we're going to do that over the next 3 weeks.
Absolutely, and it's very good that, again, this is a proposal where you are going to have a chance with your colleagues to ask questions about this, to really dive down into these new initiatives, what's needed. Ask questions of these agency heads. Hey, what are you doing that you could cut? You know, one of the amazing things about Governor Shapiro, when he was Commissioner Shapiro in Montgomery County, before he was Attorney General, he implemented zero-based budgeting in Montgomery County.
No kidding.
It was a huge success. They actually talked about how every agency started with zero, and they had to make the case to build up from there. There were some agencies that saw massive increases and some that saw some pretty significant reductions. But that was how they managed their government to keep them living within their means. It was a huge success. Do you know who his budget director was?
Same guy that is now.
Same guy right now, Secretary Yuri Munson. So, Governor Shapiro and Yuri Munson both were able to implement this in Montgomery County. Why can't we implement it at the state level? That's a great question for him, and I think it's something that, you know, folks like yourself have been calling for a long time. Why are we not doing more for zero-based budgeting?
Yeah, and when we talk about zero-based budgeting, basically that means every year, every department, whether it's Department of Ag, Department of Education, have to come back and prove, okay, it doesn't matter what we got last year. Whatever money we got last year, that was last year. What do you need this year? You're starting at zero and work your way up to whatever you need. Because this year, the baseline's always, what did you get last year? So starting at zero-based budgeting means you are literally starting at zero every year, so you have to prove every dollar, which, remember, this is taxpayer money. This is taxpayer dollars. So we're proving every taxpayer dollar why it's being used in state government.
Correct.
And I had no idea that the governor had implemented that. Look
yes,
at that.
he was a big fan
He's
of
a believer in
zero-based budgeting.
zero-based budgeting.
Believe it or not, you know. Something I had heard someone say recently was that it was a radio host say, you know, Governor Shapiro kind of ran as a Republican. You know, when he was in the general election, he was talking about things like controlling government spending and school choice, and he even did zero-based budgeting. since he's been elected, he's been anything but. And so, I think it's a nice reminder when we talk about these things, the Shapiro record. In the past, he's been willing to do these things. Why won't he do them now?
Yeah. Look, that's our job as House Appropriators. I know the appropriations team and on the House Republicans are going to fight hard. It's a good crew of members that really grill the secretaries
from all over the Commonwealth.
Yeah,
it's
important. Yeah,
one of the strengths of the Appropriations Committee is the fact that there are so many diverse backgrounds.
Absolutely.
And geography on that committee. I don't think there's really a corner of the state that isn't represented there. And so many great business backgrounds and government backgrounds and attorney, you name it. We really have the gamut. So it's very helpful when we're going through each of these agency proposals.
Yeah, and I always joke it's the A-team, and it's my favorite 3 weeks of the year where we really are a cohesive unit really going after the governor's proposal. So really looking forward to that. So stay tuned. I'm sure we'll do some more podcasts kind of going through the nitty-gritty of budget hearings, but we want to talk about kind of overview of where we're the starting point for this year. And look, the governor had said some good things yesterday, too, that I know House Republicans will support, but again, it's a proposal, and we got to work from there. So, Charlie, thanks for taking some time to be here.
Anytime.
And this has been, by the way, did you know? Tune in for all of my podcasts at repecker.com/mypodcast.